This is for Eve. Thank you for the biting into the tree of knowledge. I've been really nervous, and I'm astounded by the people that have already spoke because they're so together. And it says something about the strength that you have. In my mind, the people that have left or are standing on the fringes are actually the heroes. And I don't think that people that have not left, including myself, quite get it. To me, intellectually, it is the theme, crisis, conflict of our time. We're all living in it. But you people that have left are in the front. You know, it seems like maybe we're behind you, but no, you're doing the work. And I think that that is incredible. You know, I'm a clinical social worker, a psychotherapist, a psychoanalyst, and I'm here as a human being. Very important. And it's important, and I'll say this to the other professionals in the room, that when you open the door, answer your phone to respond to an email, that you're primarily responding first and foremost from your humanness to another human being. Your schooling comes second. Your theory comes second. If it doesn't support that first premise, it's not worth shit. And I think that that is extremely important. We lose it. We lose it in our theory, in our training. We hate not knowing. It's very hard for therapists not to know, even though one of the things that you learn as a psychoanalyst in your 4th year of training is to not know, to sit and not know, to sit with someone and not know. Think about it. To not fix, to listen with curiosity, openness, not judging, even if you don't like it. Allowing people to lead their own lives fully, even when they're making a choice that you don't particularly like or agree with. Get out of the way. I was first planning to talk about Freud. And then as I started listening to everyone, I was like, oh no. I know there's a lot of Freud bashing that goes around, much of it legitimate. But in my mind, he's 80% genius, 20% throw it in the garbage, and some of it is extremely insulting. And if you can get through that part, there's brilliance. Including, 100 years ago, he wrote a paper called Psychology of the Group. That's what we're talking about today. What's the psychology of the group, and how is it related to individual psychology? Why do we do this? Why do we create religions? Why do we leave them over and over and over again? And it's something about group formation. And also, everyone that has gotten up here, as far as I know, has basically said the thing to do is join a group of some sort. Find like-minded people, and that will help you out. So there's something going on here about group psychology. So I am going to talk about Freud. I'm also going to say I'm not totally a Freudian. I'm also a Jungian. So Freud, analysts in the room, we can fight it out later, because this is very basic. Freud goes towards causality. What happened, primarily in the past, to form you, that you are still stuck in continuing to repeat what's going on. Jung comes in and he says there's actually an imaginative drive, curiosity, creative potential. That, in my mind, counters the Freudian getting stuck and only looking at the past and puts in mind, what do I want to be? The first questions that I ask or talk about when someone comes in my room, other than what brings you here, and in my years working at Footsteps, one of the questions would be, why did you leave, or why are you thinking about leaving? The first answer, 95% of the time, I don't believe. Period. Full stop. Sit with that. Someone that has grown up in an insular religious community with very specific, rigid ways of being, walks into your office in Manhattan, surrounded by everything. We have trees here, but walk 2 blocks over. And they're confronted with a completely new life because they don't believe in what they just left. How profound is that? I do not want to be what I was told I have to be. It does bring up questions of choice. How does one then make a choice if it's never even a concept? I remember asking someone once when they came and they were talking about getting a GED or something like this, and I said, well, have you thought about what you might want to do after getting the GED? They looked at me like a deer in headlights and said, I've never been asked that before. I said, asked what? And they said, I've never asked, what do you want to be? I'm going to play a little bit here. And let's do the Lonnie stand-up routine just to shake ourselves out a little bit. What part of the room, if you feel willing and free to stand, and please don't feel like you have to do anything, it's coming from the part of the room that left a community. What part of the room are here as listeners, supporters, people that are curious about people that have left religions? There's 2 groups in the room that are merging. Think of that in terms of psychology. There's 2 different parts of me, which in psychobabble is called a split, that are beginning to merge. Psychology of a group, which was Freud, also became civilization in its discontents. His editor wanted him to make a psychoanalytic paper more palatable to the public, which I credit. It's still not very palatable. I mean, in terms of, it's hard. Freud's hard to read. And he also wrote a paper, which I read twice before this conference, and I'm forgetting the title of it, The Future of an Illusion. Religion being the illusion. This is 100 years ago. We're still talking about this. What does it take for us to let go of an illusion? And part of it is group dynamics. In the individual, now we're doing psychobabble, in the individual, there is different developments that have formed. One is called the ego. Part of the ego is the ego ideal. It's our best self. We do not want to get rid of this. But we also have to realize that we can't ever fully achieve it. We can't fully achieve what we imagine our greatest self can be. There's other things that we develop, conflicts. The main thing that happens is that we live in a very anxious, scary world. So we develop a strong ego to counter that. I can give everyone in this room, I'm not into diagnosis, I think it's kind of pathologizing. Not kind of, it is pathologizing. And But I can give everyone in this room anxiety. You all have it, because I have it, and that's just saying that you're all human beings. But then we do things to counter the anxiety. It is a scary world. We want to be wary. One of the things we do is we join groups. What we then do is we take our individual psychology and we bring it into the group. So the group psychology becomes the individual psychology, sort of the umbrella. One of the things that happens is that there's a group leader. First, we find groups that share our values. Think about that in this room. You all came into this room because you have shared values. Religions are shared value systems. So the group forms shared values, and there's a homeostasis. In order to have group identity, there has to be a homeostasis within the group, which means you either dumb yourself down or smarten yourself up in order to maintain homeostasis. You dress a certain way. If you don't dress a certain way, you're not part of the group. And this happens in all groups. It's the values that are different and how those values are instilled. Are they forced? Are there other options? In groups that are insular, it's rigid because there's no experience of outside. There's no experience of other group. Other group is bad. This is another way that groups maintain identity. You're bad, your group bad, my group good. Your God bad, my God good. Let's fight about it. Let's fight about real estate. This is one of my main problems with religion. I look at the world and I say, all of the wars are religious. So these religions that talk about not killing each other are killing each other. Fascinating. A lot of personal opinion here. So you're formed into this insular group, similar values. Another thing that's there is leader. Leader reflects the values back to the group. The group then feeds leader values. The leader then feeds them back, and it becomes heightened. I think you all can think about this in our world right now. How leaders reflect back sometimes the insanity of the group. And the group gets stronger. The other part about our group is better than your group is that it forms identity. Wow, that was 15 minutes already. I want to leave a lot of time for Q&A. So I'm going to skip way ahead. I want to invite people to ask any questions, my experience at Footsteps, what it's like now, but I'm going to quickly go to this, which is going to take more than 5 minutes, well, maybe 3 minutes. I think that there's also part of the group feel, because it starts in infancy. And this is why it's so freaky and upsets people so much when you leave. Like, why do people get so upset that you leave? Like, what's the big deal? Because it threatens the formation of the group. It actually threatens the ideal of the group. And then if you move and form another group, it's even more threatening because then you can say, no, my X group is better than your group. No one wants to hear that. It's very tough. And just being here, when I thought I'm nervous being up here, and I thought of everyone else, it's like, yes, there's nervousness getting up in front of a group and speaking, but there's other things involved here. Like, first of all, I could get struck by lightning. But I would imagine most ex-people that got up here thought in somewhere in their unconscious, I'm going to be punished for this. Seriously, it's in the mix. I'm going to be punished for going to Footsteps. I'm going to be punished for going to a therapist. I'm going to be punished, and I'm ashamed to be alive because of that. Wrong? Too much? Maybe. Okay. Get back to me on the Q&A. I think I'm going to go to this. This actually, well, I'm going to start. I think the other main part of this is imagination gets stifled. And imagination is the only way we make the future. We imagine, this is Jung, we imagine everything before we do it. Think about your day to day. You imagined getting here. You imagined getting in the shower. You imagined what you were going to wear. Everything here first comes way before behavior. So when people are leaving, the idea, they've grown up in places that you, don't make any images. Isn't that written on some tablet somewhere? Like one of the primary rules, do not imagine. Think about it. That's stifling. Think of an artist that might grow up in a religious community. What do they do? And in that sense, you're all artists, right? We all have creative capacity. So this is what I imagined. I had a dream last night. I am female. I am a woman. I'm standing in a huge wide open space, grassy, a savanna, a huge park, so much space, so much blue sky, beautiful trees, flowers everywhere, the sound of birds, butterflies. There are animals everywhere, but they are just roaming about, friendly, odd. Everything is nice, but I am a bit uncomfortable. It is almost too nice. There's kind of a flat feeling, not much air. It's nice, but nothing really moves or changes. I wonder what else there is. There is a huge tree in the center of the garden. I go up to the tree. There's a beautiful red fruit, gorgeous, shining like a ruby. I look closely at the fruit and then I pick it. It just seems like the right thing to do. It is almost like the fruit is saying, it is okay. You are okay. I am here for you. I take the fruit and I put it in my mouth and I close my eyes and I take a huge, big bite. It is amazing. The best fruit ever. I open my eyes and the entire park has shifted. It is still gorgeous and huge, but I can see an edge, something around it. It adds a different kind of light, more vivid colors, more colors. I'm excited. I walk towards the edge. There are different sounds and noises, and the energy is different. Time, which I did not know the minute before, is different. It is faster and just different. I'm not sure. I am trepidatious. There's an edge that I can feel, and there are some differences between the park and the other place, the thing I am calling the outside. I stand there on the edge of the two worlds. I wonder if there's more. I never wondered before. I never wondered that before. I wonder what will happen. I wonder what I should do, where I should go. I look for a long time at the park. It is so nice and beautiful, but it is also confining and claustrophobic. I did not know that yesterday. I did not know yesterday that today and tomorrow have possibility, that they can be different. This moment, this present, I did not know existed. I take a strong bite of the apple, of the red fruit. It comforts me and gives me strength. I turn away from the park and I walk towards the border of the other place. I'm strident and confident, and I have another feeling, alone, but solid. I turn back and suddenly I see that there's flows and cracks in the park. I had never seen them before. There's even storms in the park. I had never seen them before. There's people arguing. I'd never seen that before. The animals, they're still pleasant, and some of them are very pretty, but some of them fight. The illusion fades. Sometimes the illusion crumbles. I see the man that lives in the park. I see him out of the corner of my eye. I know him. He's familiar. He's watching me. He has some sort of soft look in his eyes, like he's holding me with his stare. Later, I will call it concern. Maybe love, maybe possession, maybe force. He yells something. Later, I will say it was my name. He runs up to me. He says, I want. I'd never heard someone say, I want. I realize, I want. I have desire. We had never described or expressed desire before. I mean, of any kind. We did not know it. It felt good. It felt sweet, flowing, fluid, like our bodies, which had felt so constrained. We felt all these things at the same time, love and hate, fear and calm, joy and devastation. We learned the difference between emotions and thinking. We learned reason. We learned shunning, consequence, hate. Sometimes I would be shamed. Sometimes I would feel shame. Shame makes us hide. That's the symptom of shame. The cure for shame is to make connection and be revealed. To look into someone else's eyes is what actually counters shame. That's psychoanalysis, by the way. I look at the man, and he is also holding the red fruit. I see it, and I look him directly in the eyes. I am a woman looking a man directly in the eyes for the first time. And he smiles. I smile back right into his eyes. We are filled with glee. Much later, walking in the other place and thinking about the park, we would call it vulnerable. We would call it strong. We would call it human. We would call it freedom. And for the Q&A, you can ask me the next phase of what happens when Eve walks into my office or into a place like Footsteps or ex-Muslims or any other of the groups here, or Adam walks in as well. Thank you. How much time we got for the Q&A? 15? Still have 15? Oh, a little short, okay. What you got? I'm going to pass this mic. This mic? This mic. Oh. Switch. He has to have someone to give the mic to.
He'll turn it on.
Good?
Raise your hands if anybody has any questions.
Go for it. The back.
Hi, everybody. I'm curious to know regarding religion. Is it that religion, you mentioned religion sometimes instigate wars. I want to know is it religion that starts the wars or how people express themselves through religion that causes wars?
Wish I was a lawyer. I don't know if that's on. Can you hear me? Okay, cool. People join groups, individuals join groups. Groups, of course, force sometimes, coerce sometimes, or make it feel really good to join a group. Some part of the group psychology and the ideal would Encourage, that's not the right word. Motivate, maybe not for good reason, but motivate someone to fight or kill someone else or another group to maintain its individuality or to maintain its group ideal. So I think individuals start groups and then groups start wars. And remember that groups hold common values. Often what we are fighting over in wars is how we see things. The other group doesn't see it the same way. That's why we're fighting. Does that even come close to answering your question? Okay.
Hi. I was wondering if you had any insight into, like, as an outsider, if one is, say, discussing with someone who's very close to the group and, like, somehow trying to convince them otherwise, or at least trying to argue against it. Is there any strategy or insight that you can present, other than just giving a rational argument, that could maybe help bridge the gap and, lead to better discussion or somehow better convincing to them?
Let me make sure I heard you correctly. Is there any suggestion I can give when someone from another group
Somebody
comes
that's left
to-
the group,
to
I
your
think,
group?
is talking to somebody that is still in the group. So if you're talking from Islamic context, I'm thinking he's
To
talking
study
about
the
somebody
group?
that's an atheist that has left the faith
To-
and is talking to their Muslim families.
Something like that.
And is the other person coming to study the group?
No, just
Interfamily dynamics,
Hold on,
friends and
'cause
family.
too many people are talking. Sorry about. I know you're trying to help.
just like a friend, or just somehow end up discussing with them, like friend, relatives, families, or anything like that. Just
Okay, I'll try to answer. So someone comes to the group from another group and is wanting to
convince them or argue against.
abuse them.
Convince them or argue, give some argument for them to change their perspective or leave
okay.
the group or something like that.
Curve. Yes? Is that what it's curve? Again, I'm not sure if I'm understanding the question. The first response is why let them in the house? But what do you do if someone's trying to come and convince you to go back? I'm sorry. Can someone close it? Because maybe it's my hearing.
Yeah, so basically he's talking about, say, from if you're a Muslim, you left the faith, and now you're talking to your family members, and what's the best way to convince them of your new perspective? Same with somebody leaving ultra-Orthodox Judaism, and they're talking to their families. What's the best way to achieve that?
I feel like someone that has left might have a better way of answering that question. What I generally do, if I have two people in my office that are conflictual, this is tough. And sometimes it's not possible. I mean, sometimes it's really, I have to leave or you have to leave. Can get to that. But if there's some kind of common ground, generally that's a mediation process, primarily, if it's two individuals, in your mind first, right? The question being, do you want to be right or do you want to have a relationship? It's a tough one, right? This might happen in the instance of someone having left, full on, angry, rageful, I don't want to do anything, but they miss their family. And their family might ask them to come back for a holy day. That person might then be asked to wear whatever the proper clothing is. You have to make some tough decisions, generally around whether you want to have a relationship or not. And sometimes the answer is no, I do not want to have a relationship. So I think there's some sort of internal mediation process. And I think often that is, what are the common values? What are the things we actually both value and respect that we might be able to give up a little on. I don't think that full-on arguing, I don't think it's bad, but I just don't think it gets you very far, because I think it sometimes releases anger, which I think is an important motivator and catalyst for change. I think sometimes, if possible, it's to agree to disagree. I think when you take constructs that are so rigid that are often the person is not willing to move, then I'm not sure that much can move forward unless you find common ground, something that is worth working for in the relationship. I think that that's very hard sometimes. I don't think it's impossible. And I think there are probably plenty of people in this room that have had something that they have gone through where they've found some sort of way of finding middle ground to navigate that. I hope that answered you somewhat. There's more back there. Thank you, microphone deliverers.
In treating individuals for many years, I'm wondering if you've noticed any long-term implications for people who have left, and if there's anything unique.
People who have long-term complications and?
No, you're just long-term implications from leaving, like in your practice. Are there some?
What do I do?
No, just do you notice it, and what are these things? No,
think-
because I think a lot of people think about leaving as an event.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, thank you. I think I just want to say I might have a little bit of problem hearing with the microphone, just the way microphones sound. So it's not you, it's me. The main place I think people are stuck that I have worked with is really in the imaginative process. I do think it gets stifled. I think it's part of the psyche. It's a major drive. Freud said sex and aggression are the two instinctive drives. Jung said there's at least a third, and that is imagination. And not everyone has sex and aggression. Everyone has imagination. So there's a drive towards imagination. In rigid fundamentalist communities, no, you don't. It's not. Unless you're imagining like we imagine, don't do it. I mean, that's my understanding. I imagine in certain households, in certain relationships, that's a little different. It can shade and be a little different. But I think fundamentally, it's fundamentalist. It's don't imagine, or only imagine like we have told you to. So one of the things is loosening up the imagination. For me, I'm a psychoanalyst, it's listening to the unconscious and inviting in the unconscious. When I just read that thing about the apple, I'm using a religious story, sometimes used against women, as a metaphor for change and strength. That's shifting the narrative for purpose. In my practice, it's really listening for whatever imaginative pull. Sometimes it is saying, like the guy that was telling me about the GED, what do you want to do? And like, what? No one's ever asked me. Well, my response then is he's stuck because he's never done this before, not because he's lacking. At Footsteps, we started doing programs that I felt would enhance imaginative capacity. It's very simple. I mean, just engaging in art and create. I've never done this before. Yeah, you and everybody else has never done this before at some point in time. So it's also a safe place and challenging. Like, I'm not just going to sit there and let you be stuck. Let's work on this together. Like, let's figure this out. But I think imaginative capacity and it being cut off. Do you have an example that you feel gets stuck, or that the therapist only gets stuck? I think you're talking about the therapist getting stuck on the person leaving, right? The fascination of like, yeah, okay. I think that that's a big one. And actually, I've talked to a lot of colleagues and people that just know stuff. Why, in psychobabble, it's called transference and countertransference. Transference being what the, don't like these words, patient brings to the room. Countertransference, just bad use of words, what the analyst or therapist brings to the room. All it means is how you are outside of the room and how I am outside of the room are going to somehow come into the mix and get played out. One of the things that is very strong from every colleague that I've talked is the therapist, social worker, client, administrator, anyone else that's from not leaving brings to the, oh, you're Amish. You speak Yiddish. This isn't just social workers, this is like every Jew that doesn't speak Yiddish. Right? Oh my God, they're preserving, and frankly, preserve Yiddish, please. Get rid of stuff, but take some things with you, including your language. It's so core, because Yiddish is probably the way some of you dream. Like that's core. It's imagistic. Your language is images. So to keep your language is extremely important. But I think the therapist gets stuck in the novelty, in the, oh my goodness. I think part of that is, again, back to the group formation and the ideal, right? Because somehow people leaving are questioning the idea that the ideal can be questioned. That rocks everybody's world, including your therapist. A good therapist is going to kind of go like, what's going on with me that I'm like I'm stuck, or I'm having such a strong response to this. I don't think that's bad, by the way. I think for me, I've had a very strong response to pretty much everyone that I've worked with at Footsteps. I mean, I'm here at this conference because I can't say no to Malky. So there's some sort of response that is inherent in this. But I think that's the power of this thing we call religion or God. It's everywhere. It's like, there's not a time that we have not created this thing so that it has some sort of power. I'm not surprised your therapists are kind of like, then they need to get over it, right? They need to take that to their therapist. Seriously. They need to take it to their therapist and their supervision. They need to learn about your culture. Every therapist in the room, learn holidays. Learn what Sukkot is. Learn what a sukkah is. What does it represent? Because those are in the unconscious, right? Those kind of rituals and themes, right? At Footsteps, like, what do we do? We're not a religious organization. We're for people leaving religion. And there's this major holidays, 2 of them back to back, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, in that order. I got the order right? Okay. Just stir up anything, even if you've left. That you know that the holiday is going on, you know you're not invited, or you don't want to be invited, but you know that something's happening. However you feel about the party, you know what's going on. But to know what it means, right? To know that one is a holiday representing newness, and a new year, and everything that entails, and the rituals that go along with it, and that the other one is atoning and honoring past and relationships and death, the big one, and to know holidays, to be able to say whatever is appropriate in that holiday. I don't know Yiddish. I've worked with people that have left Hasidim for like 10, 15 years now. this much. I know Michigas. And often when I worked at Footsteps, the first thing that would happen is a phone call. This is back when people talked on them. And people would call, and either over the phone or in the first time that they met, they would say, straight up, "Are you Jewish?" Now, as a trained psychoanalyst, we don't give up much information about ourselves in any way because we feel like it interferes with your process. So there's reasons for it. We're not just being mean or rude. To me, at first, I was like, that's a fair question. It deserves a yes or no. I'm not Jewish. Second question, do you speak Yiddish? No, I don't speak Yiddish. Now the person's starting to squirm a little and going like, why am I here? But they're also liking that I'm not Jewish and liking that I don't speak Yiddish because that's what they're going for. They know people that speak Yiddish and are Jewish. So the other, in this instance, actually helps. It actually challenges and helps the process. Then what I would generally say, because I interpret, I would say, you want to know if I'm Jewish or speak Yiddish. What you're concerned about is whether I'll understand you. That's a different question. So let's talk about whether I'll understand you. And my answer was generally along the lines of, I'll get you enough. I will not understand everything. And everything that I don't get, you will educate me. That's true of everyone that comes in my room, though. That's not about, I can't possibly know everyone's story and what it entails. So everyone that comes into my practice and in my life in general has to educate me about what their life is. I get that it's annoying if you've told 1 million people, and you want someone to understand. Anybody else? What's the time? It's it. That's it. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.